Hello and welcome back to Greg's Game Room. It's time for another 5 arcade to 2600 ports video. Our next game is one of the greatest of all time, Centipede, written by Ed Logg and Donna Bailey, and published by Atari in 1980. Just in case you've never heard of it, you play as the role of a bug shooter protecting a mushroom land. Multi-segmented centipedes appear at the top and work their way downward. If you shoot a segment, it turns into a mushroom and the centipede breaks apart, amping up the challenge. The goal is to shoot all the centipede segments to move on to the next stage. Other bugs try to stop you, including the flea, the scorpion, and that ever-annoying spider. As I said, this is one of the greatest games of all time. I mean, is there anybody who doesn't love Centipede? The 2600 version starts off with a great title screen. The mushrooms actually look like mushrooms, but when you start the game, they look a little bit more like rectangles, and that really always disappointed me. The other difference in the game is the controls. The original used a butter-smooth trackball, but with the 2600, you had to use the joystick, and it's really not as precise. So while the graphics and control take a little bit of a hit, the sound and the gameplay are top-notch. So while it doesn't look as great as the original, it sure as heck plays as good, and it's a frantic, fast-paced, fun time on the Atari 2600. Next is a rather forgotten game called Bump and Jump from Data East in 1982. It's an overhead racing game where the goal is to drive your buggy to the end of the stage. Along the way, apparently drunk drivers will get in your way and try to make you crash. Okay, I made up the drunk drivers part, but they still get in your way. The nice thing is that you have a car that can jump into the air and land on them, thus ending their driving career. Sometimes you even have to jump over gaps in the road. Well, no one said video games had to be realistic. The 2600 version was written by Jeff Radcliffe and Dave Akers and published by Mattel Electronics. The original game was never really a graphics marvel to begin with, so the Atari does a decent enough job replicating the original. But the important thing is that it plays the same, and I can confirm that the gameplay is faithfully retained here. Sound is okay, I suppose, but I find the music repetitive and therefore grating. I'd actually turn that down. Bump and Jump, it's a fun game, and it's a really decent conversion on the Atari 2600. Crystal Castles is our next game, and it's another trackball game written by Franz Lanzinger and Sam Lee in 1983 and published by Atari. In it, you play as Atari's only ever mascot character named Bentley Bear, whose goal in life is to steal gems from the witch Berthilda. I think that's the goal. Stealing all the gems from the witch, isn't that the goal? You move around in 3D-esque looking castles, avoiding creatures like balls, weird gem-eating snake things, skeletons, trees and bees. You can jump over the trees to stun them, and then you can kill the gem eaters by touching them just as they're eating a gem. Bet you didn't know that. As expected, the 2600 version is a huge graphical downgrade from the original. Created by Peter Naday with graphics by Michael Kosaka, it still retains the gameplay of the original, or at least it tries to. Again, this version is controlled with a joystick, which makes the game feel totally different. Long gone are the precise controls needed to dodge enemies and even do basic things like travel diagonally. It's pretty tricky with the joystick. There are, I think, 16 different castles, with some just being variants of other castles. I I would say the sound is quite faithful to the original, and I do enjoy the small amount of music that it has. Even if it's not perfect, all the basic elements are there, and it's a fun game. I used to play it all the time. Our next game is Defender, programmed by Eugene Jarvis in 1981 for Williams Electronics. I just felt like saying that dramatically. In this hugely difficult game, thanks to its overly complex controls, you play as a spaceship protecting humans from being kidnapped and mutated by aliens. Shoot the aliens, save the humans, use your hyperspace to avoid being hit if it works properly, sometimes it fails, and launch smart bombs at the right time to destroy everything on the screen. There's a tiny bit of music at the start of the stage, but it's really the sound effects that are truly special here. There's not much in the way of graphics except when your ship explodes, but it's a fun and frantic game that has become a true classic. Now let's discuss the Atari 2600 version written by Bob Polero. Right off the bat, the graphics give you the impression that you're flying over a city rather than a lifeless moon. It just feels weird. Next are the controls. You really need 3 buttons to play this game. Fire was assigned to the button, but hyperspace? You actually have to go above the screen to do it. Also, to launch a smart bomb, you have to go below the city. This completely ruins the spontaneity and frantic nature of the game. If I'm about to get hit by an alien, I just don't have time to go above or below the screen. Sound is good enough, but the gameplay and graphics are such a departure from the original. I gotta say though, I still played the heck out of this game back in the day. It's still kind of fun even though it's a lot different. Mario Brothers is our next game, and it was written by the legendary Shigeru Miyamoto for Nintendo in 1983. In the game, you play as Mario or Luigi Mario. Yeah, I guess that's their last name, Mario. And they're cleaning out a sewer. I guess that makes this the very first sewer simulator game. Anyway, you have to clear turtles and crabs and fighter flies and slip ice from the sewer, all while avoiding fireballs and collecting coins. To clear an enemy, you want to hit the platform from below to flip them over. Then what you do is knock them out by touching them. There's a POW block that will flip over all the on-screen enemies at once, but don't expect it to save you when you're in a bind. As expected, the 2600 version looks and feels different than the arcade. The platforms are kind of dull in comparison, but surprisingly, Mario looks like Mario and not some blob. He moves and jumps very nicely, actually. The turtle enemy seems a bit smaller than the original, but the crab, fighter flies, and fireballs are just as good. And even the slip ice guy is here to make the platforms, slippery. The POW block is also here, and are the bonus stages. One thing that is different, and I've never understood why, are the coins that appear after defeating an enemy. They're wafers instead. Well, I guess even plumbers gotta eat. Of all the Nintendo games that appeared on the Atari 2600, Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye, I think this is the best one and the closest to the arcade original. So there you have it, 5 more arcade ports for the Atari 2600. There's a lot more to come, so make sure you click like and subscribe to be notified for future videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.